the redwoods meet the sea.
The ocean.
The beauty. Of numerous tsunamis.
Welcome to History Del Norte, a production of KFUG Community Radio and the Del Norte County Historical Society.
(1867).
What was that? What were you looking for?
Just somebody's marriage.
Oh, wow.
That's Karen Betlieski, coordinator of the Del Norte County Historical
She called in
Society.
today and asked if we had a marriage record.
When it comes to matters of local history, whether general questions about the community or more specific questions about, say, your own family history, Karen is the woman in the know when it comes to our collective story. Along with a staff of dedicated volunteers, Karen does more than greet the tourists and locals that walk through the door of the old jail on H Street, home of the Historical Society's museum since the late 60s. Put simply, Karen remembers things, as many things as she can.
And you just walked over and picked up a binder and dug through it and found it?
Yep.
That's
I've spoken with Karen many times, for many different reasons, and each time I've ended up going on a kind of journey, the twists and traces of which were dictated by the stream of collective consciousness Karen channels. We could start out discussing the remnants of a stone wall that still juts fossil-like from the grass in a downtown lot and end up with a thumbnail history of major moors on the North Fork of the Smith River. No matter how much time I'd allowed for a quick visit to the Historical Society, I was always late to whatever came next. I stopped by the museum this particular winter's Saturday to pitch an idea to Karen. How about a podcast about the Historical Society? I'd gotten the idea and the requisite motivation from a Society Facebook post that had featured an audio recording of a speaker at a 1963 Historical Society picnic. The speaker, George T. Berry, shared first-hand stories about turn-of-last-century Big Flat. I'd love the history, but I'd also love the history's history. The fact that I was listening to history being recounted in a 57-year-old recording created this almost palpable sense of our movement through time, a feeling that was only reinforced after I'd contacted the speaker's grandson and the original poster of the recording to SoundCloud, David Berry. David lives outside Del Norte now, but his family goes all the way back to the founding of Crescent City. Familiar names like Indert and McNamara pass through the family history. There's even a founding member of the Historical Society in his family tree. As current members of his family pass on, David explained to me in a Facebook message, the trove of familial historical artifacts has been collecting around him. And since many of his relations have been educators and historians, there's a lot of trove to collect. I asked David if I could play the recording on KFUG Community Radio, and he agreed, and suggested I listen to the other recordings he'd posted. From there, it was just a small logic hop to the idea of sharing these recordings podcast style. All of which brings me back to the Historical Society's museum in an old jail on a rainy Saturday in January, and yet another wonderful conversation with Karen Betlieski.
Oh, we could turn that off.
Well, wherever you want to be, wherever
We
you
could
want
turn
to
that off.
I figured there was only one place to start this podcast, so Karen and I settled into the documents room under the stairs, and I asked her about a subject I don't think we've ever discussed before, her history.
Well, how long have you been doing this, Karen?
I got hired in 2010.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so 2010, so you're pushing, 9 years doing this now. What got you involved? What made you...
Actually, I wanted to volunteer. Mm-hmm. I wasn't working at the time, and I wanted to volunteer somewhere. And so I saw the Historical Society's booth at the holiday fair. Mm-hmm. And I said, ooh, that could be fun.
Just a wild hair? Anything?
Yes,
Is there historical stuff in your background? Or
no.
That could be fun, huh?
No, yeah.
Has it been fun?
Yes.
Yeah, good.
It has been awesome. I love this job. This job is, I don't know, just well, you learn something all the time. Mm-hmm. Every day you learn something.
What are some things like, because you're so good, I come in here, different times over the last couple of years, and there's always a story, there's always something, What are some of the things that strike you, that you remember as having learned you didn't know before?
Everything.
Everything.
Yeah,
Every
I didn't really know too much about Del Norte County. Mm-hmm. I moved here when I was 11, And so basically I just kind of grew up in the preteens, and, you know, I went to the schools here, but they didn't really teach too much about Del Norte County history. And that was, of course, back in the day when they didn't teach too much about Del Norte County history. So when I came...
I've never gone to school here. I'm sorry to interrupt, but do they now? Do you
Yes.
get more Del Norte history? In
Yes, I
classes
do.
there?
It's in the curriculum in I believe in the 3rd grade, and also in the 8th grade.
Oh, wow, okay. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yes. So there's the two, you know, the 2 grades get exposed to the Del Norte County history.
Now, was that through any work of the Historical Society, or were those outside agents who put that together?
You know, I'm not really sure about that. I'm not sure. But the Historical Society was involved in the teaching American history. So I do know that, you know, there was a grant, teaching American history grant. And that was before my time, so I don't really know too much about it.
So in your time, okay, over, I remember, and I think I've said this a couple of times, I remember when this museum was basically a table full of like old rusty things on the 3rd floor, and the old jail cells, because we're in the old jail.
Right.
The collection has just grown exponentially in just my life as I've known it since the 80s, all the way down to the merchandise that you sell, the books that are out there, all of the things everywhere, the lens from the lighthouse, everything that's been added.
Yes.
How much has it changed in your time in the past 9 years?
It hasn't changed too much in the past 9 years. We do add things to the collection, you know, as people bring them in and donate them.
Is it just a matter of donation like that?
Yes. Yes. Well, when they first started it, when they first started the Historical Society, it was 1951. In 1953 is when Battery Point was decommissioned. So they began using Battery Point as a museum.
Oh, wow.
So they had that museum. And then in 1957, Lillian McNulty died, the owner of the McNulty House. And she willed her house to be used as a museum and a library.
Oh, whoa.
As long as it was used, it was to the county, as long as it was used as a museum or library, you know, we could manage it and keep it. But if the time came that wasn't possible, then it would go back to the family, which is what has happened.
Yeah.
Yes, so in 57, they also had, after 57, they had the McNulty House. So they had these 2 museums, and then when they got the old jail, which is this building, then they had this 3rd building. So basically what they did was they added everything and put it into this collection. The house required a lot of work. It was built as a wedding present to Lillian McNulty from her husband James McNulty.
When was it built?
I think
It probably says
I'm not
over the
really
door,
sure, but I think we can. There's a picture in the office that we can look at that will tell us.
I've heard it's terribly haunted too.
Well, just ask Michelle. Ask Michelle. I don't know about that, but ask Michelle. I've only been in it a couple.
So I asked Michelle.
I actually saw Lillian walk through the dining room, and it was middle of the day, so at first I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me, but because it was bright as day, and she just kind of walked by in her dress and through the dining room, and I was home alone, so there was nobody else there.
Wow.
So that was the only conclusion I can come to, even though I thought I might be a little off my rocker, but...
Back with Karen in the documents room.
When did the Historical Society acquire this building then?
I believe in 1965.
Okay.
So 64 is when they, is when they moved over, when they moved the prisoners over to the new jail there, and then we got this, the Historical Society got this building. Even before they moved the prisoners, they had already taken steps to get this building.
Oh, okay. They
And yes, so the county pretty much was okay with them taking over the building. The Historical Society actually owns the building now.
I remember at one point walking with an uncle of mine at some point. This was back in the 80s, and we were walking around, and this was back when not much was happening.
Right.
And we were walking at night outside, and he looks up and he goes, "Oh, I remember that window."
We've actually had people come in, like a gentleman will come in, and he'll say, I remember my stay here back in 1942. He'll say. And so, of course, you know that at one time he spent a little time in jail, or a night, overnight, or something, you know. But that was back in the day when, you know, disturbing the peace and that kind of thing.
That's funny. I love the fact that it's just not something that was built to house. It's history itself. I love that about the building.
Well, and I read an article recently in one of the newspapers about 1927. There was an when I say attempted escape, they didn't really get that far. One of the prisoners had a violin, and he would play the violin while they would saw through the bars, so that the guard would not hear them sawing through the bars. So he would play the violin. It actually made the paper.
Oh no!
But that is a kind of a cute story.
Physical things you have in the collection, like I said, going all the way up to is the biggest thing the lens from the
yes.
Are they big? Okay. But then also you've got these documents, as we were talking about just when I first started recording, and you looked up somebody's marriage records, right? So tell me about the documents that you have here. You've got we've got Del Norte triplicate going back how far? I think, and you aren't you? Isn't the Historical Society kind of also? Is it an official archive for? Because like the triplicate doesn't have this stuff. Right?
No, they don't.
Yeah,
they don't. We get a lot of people who say, "Oh, the triplicate told us."
Come here.
Yes, to come here. So basically we have the triplicates going back to about 1929.
Wow.
Actually, these are the hard copies, the actual physical thing you can scan through and touch, and it goes to 1989.
Okay.
There is one edition that is missing, and we have that on microfilm. But we do have microfilm that goes back a while, you know. So we also have Crescent City Americans.
That's what I was going to ask. The previous papers, yeah.
Yes, we have Crescent City Americans, pretty much going back to when they started. They started in 1926. I don't know that. I think we have the 1927. Crescent City Americans.
I see a 28. Oh, Courier. I didn't know about the Courier.
Courier.
Okay.
Yeah, well, the triplicate actually is a bunch of, the reason it's called the triplicate, it was 3 newspapers that combined.
I always assumed it was because my whole life it only came out 3 times a week.
Oh,
no, it's 3 newspapers. Oh, okay.
3 newspapers combined.
Was it the Courier and American?
I do believe it was, no, it wasn't the American. It was the Record. I believe it was the Record and the Courier. I don't really know exactly which ones combined, but the American never was affiliated with the triplicate.
They were publishing at the same time, right?
Exactly.
Oh, I had no idea where the triplicate came from as a name. That's wonderful. So, and you were showing me too. You've got video cassettes and audio cassettes over here too that need to be digitized and taken care of. But those seem like just without. Beyond value. I mean, having first and second hand things recorded like that's amazing.
Yeah, we really need to start doing that with some of our older members. Also, is getting some people to come in and record some things, because they're slowly dying off, and they have all this knowledge that is dying with them.
So you have this research room here. This is available for the public to come in and dig through these, right?
Yeah, they can come in. They could come in and look.
Maybe dig is too.
We do usually, we do usually charge.
Really? Okay, just
we do usually charge. If you come in and do it in house, it's the first hour is free, and then every hour after is $2.
Oh wow!
$2.
$2. Yeah.
But I'll tell you, probably Wally Mayseal came in not long before he died, not long before he passed away, and he came in. And he was looking for something specific But you can't imagine how much fun he had looking in these old papers and reminiscing about the things that he was seeing. And he had a story about like everything. It was so neat. He was like, his eyes lit up. It's amazing what that can do, what just reminiscing can do to a person. Yeah. And we have a lot of people that'll come in and they'll ask, like, I'm looking for a specific article. Now, it's easier if they're from out of town to have them do it, because what happens is our volunteers get so engrossed in the papers and what was happening, and oh my gosh, she looks so young, oh, that's so-and-so back in the day, but it's so much fun to actually look in the papers, even if even if those people are quite a bit older than you, you're still looking in the old newspapers, seeing things as it was happening. And I believe the newspapers had so much more to offer back in the day.
They had to offer so. They had to offer everything.
Yes.
I just and even right down to I like looking at the ads for like the old businesses in town.
Exactly. But it's so much fun working here and just pulling out something. All these file cabinets behind you are filled with events, people, places, so you can look things up about certain things. And most of the things that are in the file cabinets actually come from the papers. Our researcher has been working here since 1974.
Who's your researcher?
Mary Lou Saunier. She can usually tell you where something is when you come in and you're like, I'm looking for this, but I really don't know what to call it or what it would be under. And you can usually ask Mary Lou and she'll go, oh, it's under this.
I would love to talk to her.
She's amazing. She's amazing. These are obituaries.
Oh, wow.
And the ladies have done a great job cutting obituaries. So we have obituaries back into the 1800s. But most of, like, our present obituaries, the obituaries that have come out, this is 2010 to the present. This is so much fun to do. It really is. This is so much fun to do. It's so nice. People call all the time. I'm doing my family history, and I need an obituary for this person. He died on this day, and we can actually look, and if it's not in here, it may be in the newspaper, the obituary. I mean, most of them are here, but every once in a while we'll find something. Or my great-grandfather was killed in a logging accident, and I don't know anything about it. Can you help me find the information? So we get a lot of requests like that, but I think doing the part where you put people in touch with their ancestors, and, this is my great-great-grandfather, but I don't know anything about his kids or his life or whatever, and looking at the obituary will sometimes tell them which way they need to go.
So here we are, we're in the winter time. You're open 2 days a week here.
Yes.
That'll change in what, May?
It changes at the beginning of April at the lighthouse.
Okay.
Because that's when people start really coming. So it'll change at the beginning of April. We find that mid-May is the best time to open for us.
Okay.
Things still are a little bit slow into the later part of May. So it just doesn't pay to be opened.
Yeah. But it picks up at the lighthouse. You get tourists who show up
Yes.
for the tours at the lighthouse.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, so they're still open on weekends. And then April, they'll be open every day, tide permitting. Not from 10 to 4, tide permitting.
Yeah. And how many volunteers do you have here at the museum, or working in the society in general?
Working in the society in general, probably going into the 60s.
That's great.
Now, but I always include the lighthouse keepers.
Okay, sure.
And the lighthouse keepers change almost every month. And they're for people from all over.
Okay, all right. So how in the world can I get on that list?
Oh, you just come down and get an application.
Okay, I will do that.
You come down, get an application.
Can I get an application today?
Yeah.
I would love to do that.
We have people from all over come to stay, like our October keepers. One was from New York, and then with her she had someone from Pennsylvania, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. So we have people from all over, Missouri, Florida, you know. So, you know, when I count my volunteers, I also count them, and I count the RVers as well. They're the helpers that help with the lighthouse tours.
Okay.
Because it takes 4 people really to have it really going smoothly. It takes about 4 people.
Because I've seen folks lined up out there to go through the
Yes.
house. Yeah.
That is the big money maker for the Historical Society. It's a special place.
Yeah.
It's a special place, and almost everyone who comes wants to come back. We've had a couple that came from Idaho, and when they left and came in to say goodbye, he had tears in his eyes, and he said, "I feel like I'm leaving my baby." You know, and he was only here. They were here for a month, but you establish a connection with the place, a real connection. So they have been back since then, and you know, starting in I think 2022, they plan to come every year, and they're on the schedule.
Oh, good for them. That's
you know,
good.
but
And you want somebody who loves it like that. You want somebody who's engaged.
Yes.
That's beautiful.
yeah, it there's all these connections. Battery Point Lighthouse makes a lot of connections.
Isn't that what this whole place is about?
Yes. And the great thing about this place and about Battery Point Lighthouse is the people who come, they want to be here.
Yeah.
So it's a really nice place to be because everybody wants to be here. It's not like working in, you know, a high school or at the hospital or something like that. Everybody wants to be here pretty much, except for parents who drag their kids along. And, you know, their kids are bored.
I came here with all the high school kids, and there's
yes.
corral them.
Some of them are bored. Some of them are bored with it. Some of them don't care. But as you get older, history starts to become really important to you.
It really does, yeah.
Starts to become really important to you.
Becomes your story, yeah.
Yes.
That's wonderful.
See what I mean about talking with Karen? A conversation with her always takes you someplace, and the place it takes us now is the point of this podcast. To celebrate and share the work of the Del Norte County Historical Society, and along the way feature some of the audio recordings that exist both in their collection and in the community at large. This first History Del Norte podcast will feature another of David Barry's recordings. This one from 1961 was also recorded at the annual Historical Society picnic at Adams Station in Gasky. The speaker is Bernhardt Chester Ole Indert, and his topic is, fittingly, the history of Gasky. Enjoy.
It was his estate, and so they bought several pieces of property that he had enclosing the estate, but among them was the toll road, which they bought in 1900. And they operated it until August 1st, 1904, when they sold it to Del Norte County for $5,500. During that time, they had a lot of trouble maintaining the road, losing proposition for them too. But there were herds of cattle and bands of sheep and horses driven, say, from southern Oregon. They go through here to maybe clear to San Francisco to be sold. And those animals would run up the bank and down the bank and all over and kick rocks in the road. So that was always a headache to clear the road out after those animals crossed. I have a little piece of cloth here that gives the rates of toll. I think it's about 12.5 cents a head for a sheep or something like that, or 5 cents. But they did more damage than the toll brought in. And they also had other troubles. A mail contractor by the name of Harper, they only had one toll gate at that time. That was right here at the river. This mail contractor, Harper, who in those days got a contract for carrying the mail from Grants Pass to Crescent City, and he refused to pay toll. Well, the gate was locked and he wouldn't dare break it down, so he held off for some time. He would drive down from Grants Pass to the gate and have another one of his stages go out from Crescent City up to the gate. They'd transfer the mail back and forth wouldn't pay any toll, each would go on their own way. Well, Harper had to haul feed for his horses when they stayed over down here at the gate, so he was put to a lot of inconvenience. He became so angry about it, he took it up to the Postmaster General and claimed inasmuch he was carrying United States mail, he wasn't subject to paying toll. Well, my dad and his partner, France, also took it up with the Postmaster General. And so happened that France and Endert won out on it. The reply from the Postmaster General was that Harper had to pay toll same as anybody else. The fact that he carried mail didn't exempt him. So Mr. Harper paid toll after that, but he never bid on another contract. There's some other troubles they had. The days of gypsies. Remember when some of those older ones remember the bands of gypsies, and they traveled by wagons. And they would come down to the toll gate. Couldn't pay any toll at all. My uncle was in charge and operating the whole works here, the ranch and the toll road. And so they would walk down at night and raid the chicken house and the garden and steal a lot of things. So he would let them through the gate and send them on to Crescent City. Well, it happened. There were a lot of guns, rifles and shotguns here at Gasky, and so my uncle would round up when there'd be a band of gypsies there. He'd get all the men that there were and arm them along the road, both sides. And when the gypsies came through, they just had to keep on going. They were afraid of those guns. So the gypsy trouble didn't last very long. As you know, they quit traveling by horse and wagon. They took to automobiles. Guess there aren't any more of them now. Then they had, France and Endert had to build a new bridge at Patrick's Creek, and that was quite an expense to them. And then about that time, prior to 1904, automobiles began coming through one now and then, and there was quite a lot of discussion about it, about people coming into the county had to pay toll from Oregon coming in, and also had to pay toll to get out of the county, and they wanted that toll road abolished, or the toll abolished. And there was such a furor created that my dad and France sold to the county, and they got rid of quite a headache there, all right. During Gasky's lifetime, he had a store here, and quite a large one in Happy Camp. And he had much property in Happy Camp. He was a very progressive man. He had, I don't know, I have records. I guess I have probably a half a dozen mines, and I don't know how many more than that he owned. In those days, there was a lot of gold there. There was money made in Happy Camp. And in this little store he had at Gasky, I remember the gold scales, where he bought gold from the miners in exchange for their groceries. He was a supervisor in 1888 until his death on January 21st, 1896. And records show that the father of our present chairman of the Board of Supervisors, Mr. Dan Haight, succeeded Gasky. And as I remember, Mr. Dan Haight was a very capable supervisor, and he held office for several terms. There were quite a few buildings. I can roughly count up at least 20 there around his home, the barns, and there's one in particular, what we call the roundhouse. It was, I think I have a picture of it here. It was a building about 40 or 50 feet in diameter with lath siding for ventilation. There was a living stream running through it where meat and vegetables were kept. That was their refrigeration in those days. That was quite an attractive building and a good cool place to go out to on a day like this. And he kept all of his buildings pretty well separated because there was a lack of fire protection. If one burned, he didn't lose the other one. And I never heard of a fire out here until late years, long after his death. Mr. Roberts, how's my time running? You go right on. He was naturalized in the 8th Federal District Court in Crescent City on August 6, 1860. His employees on the ranch, some of whom were miners in the winter time, were Laurent Bonaz, a Frenchman, George Cook, who mined right here where the wagon wheel court is, was an Englishman. They each raised families here. They had Indian women for wives, were good women though. George Washington, who settled up there where the boys' camp is now on the Smith River. And Gus Logan, the little short German I recall. Alfred Gandon was a Frenchman. Paul Muller, another one. Billy Kelly, who was a half-breed Indian. And I don't know, maybe we have somebody here, maybe Fred Haight, who would remember the old Indian woman Buttons in Crescent City. She was the mother of Billy Kelly. And then there was Indian Jim and his family who lived across the river. And as I told Mrs. Westbrook a while ago, that his descendants are in Smith River now. Their name is James. Jasper James, and there was an Ike James. This James family, in the James family, there were 2 boys and 2 girls. Shirley, J.W. Shirley was his bookkeeper and postmaster. Peter Peacock was an old-time employee. And let's see, the Adams sisters, Mary and Ella, were cooks and chambermaids. Brother Mike was a stage driver. They came down here from Waldo, or as it was called in those days, Sailor Diggings. Gaskey, before his death, gave Mary Adams a few acres right in here, as I understand, as a gift to her. She was a faithful employee of his. But at the time of his death, she quit working there. She probably didn't want to work for France and Endard, and she came down here and established this rival stopping place. I think it is this very building here, which she built then about 1896. Well, there was a telephone line here. Of course, there was quite a bit of rivalry between them for the stages. They brought business here, and there was a telephone line from Crescent City to Grants Pass. Just one wire. All the bells would ring at the same time. When Mary Adams would hear the gas bell ring, she'd take down the receiver. There was a little ill feeling there because of our opposition here. So my dad and in Crescent City and his brother, who operated the property out here, could speak German, which they learned in school back in Ohio. So they got around Mary Adams listening by talking German. They fooled her. Well, Gaskey willed all of his property here in Happy Camp and Grants Pass, Crescent City, to his brother, E-L-I-E, Adolph Gaskey. And he made his will just a few days before his death. This was January 10th, 1896, when he made his will. His brother lived in Paris. He was a lieutenant colonel in the French army. His lieutenant colonel's son came out here in 1897, that's the year following Gasky's death, to settle the estate. My dad and Fred France had been acting as executors and maintaining the property in the meantime. So young Gasky, whose name was Charles Horace Louis Roger Gasky, he was a lieutenant in the engineers in the French army. In fact, I had some correspondence with him during First World War when I was overseas. And he came out with a power of attorney from his father. So he sold Happy Camp Properties, the store and the mining claims. And I think Gasky owned a couple of dwellings there too. Gasky owned a livery stable in Grants Pass. That was sold. And Gasky got about $20,000 for that. In 1901, about the time the estate was closed, I think it's the final settlement, that France and Endert sent $5,500 to Gasky in Paris. That's the last of the estate. So, with that money and bills that Gasky was beat out of, he accumulated quite a fortune. I recall hearing about one bill. A man operated a store over in Waldo who got, when he would run short of groceries and trying to get clothing and miner's equipment, he would send down to Gasky and borrow it. Well, that ran on for some years, and he got into Gasky for several $1,000s. His name was Charlie Decker. And after his death, or maybe it was before his death, but France and Endert sued him for this bill in the court in Josephine County. Well, they lost. It seemed like they all beat the poor fella. And then there was another $25,000 account in San Francisco that he was beat out of. Well, I'll go back to the Decker account. When that came up in court, France and Endert had no record of it. In those days, they had an old style of, we called old style now, of ledger. And Decker's account was cut out. All the pages are gone. There was no record of Gasky being owed anything by Decker, so they lost there. Well, this $25,000 account in San Francisco, Gasky loaned somebody. There was a French woman involved in it some way, and I don't know, I haven't got it straight, so I won't attempt to tell anything about it. But there was a firm of attorneys, Porter, Schlesinger and Company, who, and Joseph Kahn, K-H-N, who operated there in San Francisco and opposed the collection of that account. They said it was a gift from Gasky to this French lady. Well, now who got that money, I don't know, but the state didn't get it. So there's $25,000 more that he lost. It was about 1905 that France and Endert sold a ranch to Ralph Lake of Smith River. They operated the ranch from about 1900 to 1905, and then Ralph Lake had it a short time, I don't remember how long, and then he sold it to a Crescent City druggist, and it kept changing hands until it got to be in the subdivision stage. So now it's all caught up, and well, that's on through now. And that just about concludes what I have to say. They sold the ranch to Ralph Lake for $3,500, about 320 acres. Thank you, folks, for listening. I hope I haven't bored you.
Thanks for listening to History Del Norte, a production of KFUG Community Radio in conjunction with the Del Norte County Historical Society. Thanks to Karen Betlieski and Michelle Radisson from the Society, and also thanks to David Barry for allowing us to download and replay his recording. We'll see you next month. For History Del Norte, I'm Paul Kritz. Thanks.